Welcome back to the realm, lords and ladies. I am the Goat King, and last week I promised a deep dive into the social subsystems from the Gamemastery guide for Pathfinder 2nd edition. First, we have influence. The influence subsystem creates conversations where there is a race against time to gather enough influence with the NPC to convince them to help you. The influence subsystem gets the entire party involved by allowing a variety of skills to be used to convince the NPC. Influence social encounters take place in rounds that last typically between 15 minutes and an hour per round, depending on the context, and each PC gets one action per round. During influence, there are two types of actions you can take. There is the influence action, where you choose the NPC you want to convince, and you choose a skill you want to use to sway their opinion. The discover action, you choose an NPC and you attempt a perception check or another skill check as determined by the GM to discover details about the NPC. You choose one of three categories and learn a piece of information you don't already know, being what influence skill has the lowest DC, what are the NPC's resistances, and what are the NPC's weaknesses. NPCs being used in influence encounters have a different stat block than you would normally find for monsters or NPCs. This stat block emphasizes things important for conversation. An NPC stat block for an influence encounter will include their name and a description of who they are, their perception bonus, their will bonus, their discovery DC for perception, and skill DCs to do discovery, the skills that can be used to influence them and the DCs involved, the influence thresholds, which tells you what you achieve for earning a certain number of influence points, their resistances, and their weaknesses. The example stat block given to us is Danfy Mollyweather, a penny-pinching landlord. The perception +9, will +12, discovery DC of 13 mercantile lore, 18 perception, or DC 16 society. The skills that can be used to influence them are accounting lore, DC 16, crafting, DC 16, intimidation with a DC 20, performance with a DC 20, DC 22 diplomacy, and a DC 24 deception. Included next to these skills are small descriptions of why they're useful. Next we have his influence thresholds, where on influence 4, Mr. Mollyweather gives the troop 1 week to get him back his rent with interest before evicting them. At 6, Mr. Mollyweather gives the troop 1 month to get back to him with rent before evicting them. And at 8, Mr. Mollyweather allows the troop to stay, reduces their rent, and forgives half their debt. Resistances, the landlord thinks in practical terms with little patience for good-for-nothings. Appeals directed at sympathy alone increase the check's DC by 2. His weaknesses, Mr. Mollyweather used to visit the theater often as a small child, and performing one of his favorite old songs or plays brings tears to his eyes and reduces the performance DC by 2. We then get some extra details about Mr. Mollyweather, including his background, appearance, personality, and a penalty. Antagonizing Mr. Mollyweather by sermonizing or wasting his time causes him to cut the meeting short, reducing it to 2 rounds instead of 3. When running social encounters, it's advised that you vary the environment, the circumstances, and the NPCs. An example given for this would be at a dinner, a 4-course dinner, with 6 rounds being introductions, 1 for each of the meals, and a final goodbye after the meal, where you could have NPCs come in or out, leave, lose interest in the party, or gain interest in the party throughout the meal, or perhaps change their attitude as they become better fed and likely a little happier, and slightly better mood. Having dynamic environments like this, just like having dynamic environments for combat encounters, keeps things more interesting than having a static back and forth conversation. Next, we move to the reputation subsystem, which is about losing and gaining reputation points with a group over long periods of time. The way you gain and lose reputation is through favors and disservices, each which come in 3 categories of severity. Some actions will not modify reputation depending on their severity if you're already seen in a specific light by the group you're trying to gain or lose reputation with. This reputation table shows how many points will get you to certain reputation attitudes, as well as what kind of services and disservices can affect your reputation when you're at these attitudes. The various attitudes or reputations are described as ignored. The PCs either aren't on this group's radar or the group knows about the PCs but is generally ambivalent to them. Most groups are going to perceive you this way, and that means most individuals in the group will start with a neutral perspective on you when you meet them. Liked, the PCs have gained the group's favor. Many members of the group know about the PCs, and those who do are usually friendly to them. Of course, this is the benefit that when you talk to a person from that group, they begin already friendly as their attitude towards you, which can be useful when trying to get favors out of them. Admired, the PCs have earned the group's admiration. The majority of the group knows about the PCs and have an extremely favorable opinion towards them. Most people the party meets from this group are going to start helpful towards them, and they'll already be likely to grant small favors and requests. Revered. The group reveres the PCs as heroes and celebrities. Every member has heard of the PCs, is helpful towards them, and would take major risks to assist them. At this point, you are basically a hero in these people's eyes, and they will help you out. They like you. Quite a lot, actually. Going the other direction, we have disliked. The PCs have a poor reputation among members of this group. Many members of the group know about the PCs and are usually unfriendly to them. Now, this isn't too bad. Unfriendly isn't a severe penalty, and it certainly means it's going to be harder to ask for favors and aid. Hated. The PCs have earned the group's ire. The vast majority of the group knows about the PCs and have an extremely unfavorable opinion towards them. Many members of the group are hostile toward the PCs, and those who aren't are unfriendly. People in this group don't like you, and if they get a chance, they don't really have to stick their neck out, but they get a chance to hurt you and your party, probably going to take it. Hunted. The group actively hunts the PCs as scapegoats or nemesis, even at significant cost to itself. Every member has heard of the NPCs, is hostile toward them, and would take major risks to thwart or destroy them. I don't know how you got to this position, but it's a dangerous position to be in. Reputation is best used to track relationships with towns, noble families, organizations, and business empires. In a sandbox, this can be an invaluable tool to have a simple and easy way to keep track of these large relationships and lend meaning and importance to what the PCs choose to do and how they treat the people around them. Of course, it's not only what the PCs do, but things NPCs do can change their favorability. Being framed for a serious crime can, of course, hurt reputation. And not just that, but large events caused by NPCs or the players themselves can do much more than what a favor or disservice might summarize. It is entirely possible to go from revered all the way to hunted if they do something extremely reprehensible. The same can be said the other way around. If they find themselves doing something entirely unexpected that no one can deny was an amazing and helpful thing. The final subsystem I want to talk about today is leadership. Leadership is when the PCs want to form an organization themselves. Organizations range from level 1 to level 20. However, they don't level up from experience, instead leveling up from recruiting more followers. And the more followers they have, the higher level the NPC followers and NPC lieutenants can get. While an organization can earn or acquire a base of operations earlier than level 6, they must have a base of operations at level 6 and higher. Without a base of operations, they just cannot support the structure needed to organize so many NPCs under one banner. Now, this base of operations does not need to be a solid building in one spot. A caravan or a ship or a moving castle could do the trick. The NPCs of your organization are organized into followers and lieutenants, and they all have non-combatant stats of an NPC of their level. In general, among your followers, there'll be twice as many followers of one lower level than the level above. Essentially, this comes out to half your followers being the lowest level, a quarter being the next lowest level, an eighth, a 16th, and so on until you reach the highest level your followers can be in your organization. The same applies for lieutenants as well. The NPCs in your organization are loyal to the PCs and work to maintain and earn the money to keep the organization functioning. While the organization is not a free source of money for the PCs, it doesn't require them to provide monetary investment either in order to maintain daily function. Upon the unfortunate occurrence of a player character death, it is entirely reasonable to upgrade one of the lieutenant NPCs of your organization to the next player character to join the party. When running leadership, it's recommended to reward followers at a rate such that the organization levels up with the party. However, they need not be the same level as the party. Most of the interaction the PCs will have with their organization takes place during downtime events. These leadership events are referred to as opportunity. This is a chance to steer the organization and affect the greater world with good or bad results. Trouble. There's a challenge affecting the organization, and it may cost the PCs resources, time, and money in order to protect their organization. And windfall. The organization helps the PCs due to an unexpected benefit. Money, resources, uncommon spells or feats, political power, or clues to the adventure may be provided to the PCs by the organization. In general, it is suggested that you have more windfalls than troubles, in order to keep the PCs from abandoning the organization. After all, if the organization is continuously pulling them down, the chances of staying are fairly slim. Thank you again for visiting the realm. I've been the Goat King. If you have any questions about these subsystems, or any other subsystems you'd like me to cover, please leave it in the comments below. I think soon I want to start covering some of the optional rules for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Have a great day, and come back again next week for more Starfinder and Pathfinder.